Hey guys, Coach here. Welcome to this week's episode. This week we're taking an in-depth dive on landscape lighting, fixtures, and installation. Right out of the gate, I'd like to thank the sponsor of this week's video because the products that you see were provided to us so that we could educate you on landscape lighting. I'd like to thank the Gardenreet products. Fantastic, new on the market, not necessarily new fixtures, but definitely a quality bump that we have not seen in the industry in a while. So if you look at the products, they come rather well packaged. Picture of what it is on the front, opening it up with the fixture and the spike and the connectors that go with, and also standard LED MR16 bulb included, which oftentimes is not the case in many other companies. The spikes seem to be rather robust and rather big. They are not slotted like I have seen many ground spikes. So the wire that is used, the small 16 gauge wire, has to be put through and then come out rather than just sliding it into the ground spike itself, which many other brands have that. Not good, not bad, just a little different, that's all. And we'll see how they go together when we put the install in later in the video. So this is the Uplights that we're going to show you today. And then this is the path lights. And we selected these path lights because they were just a little different, but mainly because they were sleek and they weren't super big. And what we didn't want here at Brook and Pond is something that was really gaudy. We want the effect of the light, but we didn't want to necessarily have the fixture being the dominant prominence of the light. So these guys are all anodized aluminum, powder coated finish. With the spike that's provided, they stand up from the tip of the spike to the top at about 27 inches, which is really good for path lights. And the thing that you have to realize about Gardenreet products is they are top-notch when it comes to the quality and the making of them, and also the simplicity. For instance, when it comes to the uplights that we're going to be using, these things are beefy. They're heavy. They are not brass coated. They are solid brass. They are also double O-ringed to prevent moisture infiltration into the electrical component where the bulb plugs into. And that is also something that I have not seen. Double O-rings are new to me. I have generally seen either screw on to a gasket, which is fine, but I've also seen them where they're just a single push-on lens, and that was kind of the industry standard for a long time. And a lot of the lights that you find at non-landscape specialty stores, that's kind of their preference. They don't have double O-ring, solid brass metal type of fixtures. So let's get into the weeds of landscape lighting and exactly what you need to know to safely and effectively and correctly install a good system for your home. Backyard, front yard, it doesn't matter. The one thing that I notice, and although I'm a dude and oftentimes instructions kind of get like tossed by the wayside, so to speak, they do provide a pretty darn good descriptive instruction booklet as far as the parts and pieces of the fixture itself, where and how the lamp goes on, and also how to connect it. So the tools that you might need for a good, simple, and effective install of a landscape lighting system: maybe a little rubber mallet, certainly wire cutters and wire strippers, maybe a little utility knife, a drill driver or impact to do some mounting or drilling depending on where you want to mount the transformer, and we'll talk about strategic placements of those when we do the install. and maybe just a little hand screwdriver. And that's really about it. When it comes to connecting wires up and stuff, Gardenreet provides the connectors themselves. And these are water resistant, dielectric grease filled electrical connectors. They're just simple twist-ons that you put there, and the dielectric grease blends into the copper wire and protects it from moisture, but also, you know, keeps them together for many, many, many years. As opposed to the connectors that are prong based, where you put them over the cable and then you screw them down and two prongs go into each side to get your electrical connection. As far as materials that you will need, obviously you're going to need the fixtures, because you're not going to be able to put a system in without those. You might also need a substantial amount of low voltage cable. In total that we have here, we have 200 feet. And I'm not going to use all 200 feet. The triangle bed that you see behind us is going to be receiving this system. And I already have 100 foot in here, so I'm only going to need about another 25 feet or so. So besides, the fixtures come with 6 foot long connecting wires anyway, so that is quite a distance that you can go from fixture placement to connection, which is nice. I have seen most of the time only maybe 4 foot connections, 4 foot. So it's nice to see 6 feet. That gives you a lot of latitude, and worst case scenario, you can always trim it down. Okay, so let's talk about landscape lighting design. I am not a big fan of having landscape lighting look like the Las Vegas Strip. I think you lose a lot of the ambiance when you try to create a flooded parking lot effect. Landscape lighting, although it does lend itself to security of your property, its main focus is ambiance and highlighting that landscape that it's going into. In this particular case, the only thing we are going to use the lighting for is putting the path lights at the corners of the triangle and then uplighting the Parkland pillar birches. And that is it for now. Now, we do have some other fixtures that were provided to us, and those will be installed probably in the front yard later next spring. But what you want to do, there's some techniques that you can use in landscape lighting that is very useful depending on what effect and what size of landscape you have to highlight. There is wall washing, there is uplighting, there are path lights, there are backlighting. There's lots of things that you can do in order to accomplish the effect that you're looking to gain. In this particular case, since we're out in the forest basically, I want a very subtle outdoor lighting system. Something that would allow you to safely navigate out here on the back patio from point A to point B, because you have a path light at one corner of the triangle and another one down at the other corner. And we will see later on in the video what our throw or our beam of light actually covers and how much light it actually gives off. These particular bulbs are all LEDs. So compared to the old-fashioned incandescent bulbs, they use just a fraction of the wattage than a normal incandescent bulb. We're talking about the MR16 that uses only 5 watts of power, and the path light only 3 watts of power. So gone are the days where you need huge, I can remember 900 watt transformers on some systems that I put in back in the day. You know, because you had bulbs that used 25 watts, 35 watts, 50 watts a piece of incandescent lighting in order to gain the effect that the customer wanted. Well, in this case, I only have a 150 watt transformer, and that transformer is even overkill for the amount of lighting that we're going to be doing initially here. We are talking only about, let's do some math. 3 times 5 watts is 15 watts. 3 times 3 watts is 9 watts. So we're only talking somewhere around 24 watts total. That's not bad for doing a whole backyard landscape area. And here I have something that is capable of running 150 watts. Now, with that being said, there are some technical jargon that you should be aware of and know about when you're doing your landscape project. First of all, become familiar with the term voltage drop. Much like in irrigation, there is a drop in voltage and wattage the further the cable extends from the source. So this one's pretty nice. It has 12, 13, 14, and 15 volt lugs on it, which means I can send out 12 volts from the transformer to the fixtures. I can also send 13, 14, and 15 volts. And why is that important? Well, say for instance, I use this transformer next year to go from its source here in the backyard all the way out to the front yard. The LED bulbs, and incandescent bulbs for that matter, require a certain amount of wattage to gain the lumens that they're advertised to produce. And if I hooked them up to the 12 volt lug and then sent them all the way out front, I'm probably going to go from 12 volts probably down to 10 or even 9 volts, which would still cause the lights to work, but they just be dimmer in lumens than what you really want. So consider the amount of distance that you're going to be lighting, and then determine which would be the best amount of voltage to send downstream so that you have the same lumens or lighting near the source, your transformer, as well as the last light on your system, downstream, downrange, down cable. In this particular case, I will be using 13 volts right here in this little triangle, because on 2 cables that we're going to be using, I'm going to lose maybe a volt at the most, I think. We only have 6 fixtures, and one cable will be running 3 fixtures and the other cable will be running the other 3 fixtures. And that's pretty good. So I'm only going to lose maybe a volt at the most. So I'm not concerned about it. But next spring, if I'm running all the way out front, I have to do a couple of things. I either have to bump the voltage up from the source, or I have to increase the size of the wire, this being 12-2 direct burial landscape cable. I'm going to have to upgrade from 12-2 to maybe 10-2, and I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to up the voltage from the 14 or 15 watt lug, and it'll be plenty of voltage out there to do the job I want it to do. Okay, let's put a couple of these guys together, and I'll show you exactly how to properly assemble, and then later on we'll do some transformer hanging, we'll do some cable run, we'll do some wire cutting and splicing, and then later on, when it's dark, you can join me back out here when we light up the whole place, okay? All right, so in doing uplights or spotlights, whichever you'd like to call them, they're pretty easy. I mean, you have the head of the unit here, you have a notched capability of being able to use it as a turret, like this, up, down. There are some devices that you can actually mount in trees or in garages up high, and you can use these as down lights as well. These particular ones I selected as uplights because that's what I'm going to be doing, is I'm going to be uplighting trees subtly. So your wire feed is going to go down through your attachment screw hole and out the side. Very simple. The key to this is let the wire twist as you anchor it to the ground stake. You're going to want it to twist. Otherwise, it's going to twist in here and put a lot of strain and stress on the cable itself. So as you twist this on its mounting screws, allow the cable to twist in there, and it'll stay neutral and it won't tighten up on you. So inside, it's still the same loose cable than when we started the process. Tighten them down fairly good. I generally like to have them at just a slight angle and then do a final adjustment when I'm actually out there at dark doing the final adjustment for up and down. What you don't want to do when you're doing uplights is you don't want to highlight a lot of other things. So you're going to be mounting these fairly close to the trunk of the tree depending on the tree itself. The Parkland pillar birch that we have here are tall, narrow columnar ones, which require me to get up near the trunk and then uplight almost vertically. If you had something that had a broader canopy to it, you might even have to use 2 uplights to cover the canopy, and you're going to put it further away from the trunk to highlight the scaffolding and the branching structure of the trunk itself. So, just a little technique. So there it is. It's pretty simple, and your connection points, in this case, they've already pre-exposed the wire, so all you'd have to do here is just pull this off and then split it. And you're ready to go. One will connect to one side of the wire, the other one will connect to the other side of the wire, and it doesn't matter which one. It's unipolar, so you don't have to worry about a hot or a ground or a neutral. They're taken care of. They've taken care of that for you inside the mechanics of the transformer itself. It has a common tap on it, which is your neutral, and then the other one is going to be your hot leg going into your voltage lugs and then out. You don't have to worry about which one is which makes it really easy for DIYers. So in putting the bulb in, we're going to remove the lens cap, and you can see the double O-ring on there. Very, very impressive when it comes to that. One of the things about LED bulbs that I learned a long time ago is the casing itself is safe to handle. I try very hard to keep my hands off of the lens here. So when I'm doing stuff, I will grasp all the way down onto the casing, keeping my hands away from the insertion prongs and off of the lens itself. Inside, you will see 2 holes with a couple of retention clips. And what you're going to do is carefully place those in to the clip, work its way down in, and then insert the prongs so you have a finished product that looks like that. And it doesn't take a lot of force, but you're going to want to seat it so that you have it about like that. If it's extended up, it's probably barely in, and you're going to want to seat it down as far down in as it can be. Then we're going to put the lens back on, push down and turn, and there we are. We're ready to go. I'm going to take this one there, so it's nice and straight. All right, so that's the uplight assembly. Now let's do the pathlight assembly. They put a really good finish on these. I'm very impressed. And because of the shipping and the covering and bubble wrap, there's no damage at all to this whatsoever, which is also, I mean, coming from across the sea, I'm glad to see it being one piece. So we'll take the little tie off of there. We'll let the 6-foot lead relax a little bit. Our ground stake is going to be a little narrower for the pathlight, usually, as compared to the uplight that I showed you a minute ago. So, same process. Sleeve it through the ground spike threads. all the way up to the fixture, let the cable dangle, turn the fixture, and let the cable twist as it does it. That way it'll stay straight. Tighten it down. Check your cable, it's still nice and loose. It's not all bound up and twisted. If it does, if you happen to be doing this the first time, take it and gently untwist it and make sure it's nice and relaxed as it goes into the fixture and through the spike itself. So this particular one, as you can see, the lens here is not glass, it's Lexan, and it is very easy.
Let's move this wire in front of you.
So we're going to take the set screw out, set it aside, and then this particular one slides out like that. Take the Lexan cover off. Two-prong insertion, two-prong receiver into the electrical part of it. Press down till it's nice and firm, and then put your lens back over it. Bulb installation complete. Now, because this is a 3-watt bulb, can it take a stronger one? Yes. I would almost suggest that you test it and see what the lumen, the brightness of it is going to be before you upgrade. But I could easily see a 5 or 7 watt bulb in this, provided that you have the matching voltage to take care of that increased bulb wattage. But I think this is going to be working good. The only question that will come to mind is, because that's a cylinder bulb, a lot of the diodes are up inside lighting the fixture and not throwing the light out, but staying up inside the fixture itself. But we'll test it and we'll see how it goes. There are cylindrical LEDs that have just the down diodes facing down to where it's going to be lighting. So we'll see how this works out. But pretty easy installation. This one is now ready to go in the ground, and this is ready to get connected up. Okay, let's talk about the cabling itself. Cabling itself is pretty straightforward. It is a specific type of cable that is only meant for low voltage application. And in this particular case, we're talking about low voltage lighting systems. So this is what they call 12-2, 12 volt 2 cable type of wire. And it is very, very specific as far as its capabilities. It is a direct burial, meaning you can put it in the ground without any protection. You can put it in conduit if you want, but that's only if the application would be interfered with by shovel intrusion, weed eater or edger intrusion, something like that. I don't suggest that you install something in that particular environment where the threat of hitting it every week through yard maintenance or something would be occurring. In this particular case, it's going to be going right along the edge of the boulder wall itself. There is no more digging or anything that's going to be going on. And I'm going to put it down probably at the bottom of the mulch layer, about 4 inches at the most, where I have it looped up for each fixture. Once the connection is done, I will fold that up I will twist tie it and submerge it down in the ground and then cover it with mulch. I do not have any ground stakes. If you do have some ground stakes or staples, look for the ones that are either square U's or a rounded U ground staple. Those work really well to push them down and secure them in the ground really well. And that's what I used to do. I just don't have any. I'll probably have to order some and then come back and staple it down in at a later date. So 12-2 cable. This is where your wire strippers come into play. And in this particular case, all you're going to do is take less than an inch off of the casing. That's it. No more than. So just about like that. No more than that. There you go. And you're going to match that up with the lighting fixture wire, and those are going to get twisted together and then dry locked in place with your Scotch lock. Okay? And make sure that you have a Scotch lock that is filled with the grease, because that is the real waterproofing for long-term use. If you just take a standard Scotch lock and you put it on there, the moisture that exists in the ground and that is introduced in the ground over the course of a year, either through irrigation or through rain and snow, it's going to work its way in there, corrode up the copper wires, and eventually they'll become ineffective and not work. So make sure that you have the dielectric grease dry lock type of connector. And you can find those at any hardware store. They're not hard to find at all. Okay, so 12-2 cable is an industry standard, kind of like the benchmark, the average size for landscape lighting. In this particular case, we're going 12-2 because I want plenty of voltage to go to all the fixtures that we're going to be using here. And 12-2 will be more than enough, especially when I use that 13-volt lug. Okay, let's talk about transformers very quickly. I don't want to get too far off in the weeds with this because, number one, I'm not an electrician. I'm not an electrical engineer. I can only tell you about the parts that I know about. This particular one is your standard landscape lighting transformer. It's going to take that high voltage through the cord itself from a standard grounded, preferably GFCI grounded 120 volt outlet. It comes into the transformer, which is the top half of this fixture, and reduces it down, reduces that voltage down to 12, 13, 14, or 15 volts. Gardenreet was nice enough to provide a mechanical timer. They do have digital timers now and some of the fancier ones, but the mechanical timer, you have to adjust it according to hours in daylight. This does have the capabilities of having a photocell, which gives you the option of it coming on at dusk and going off at dawn automatically. So if that's a convenience, just remember the longer hours that you have your system on, that bulb has a life, a shelf life, and eventually 5,000 or 10,000 hours down the road, those bulbs are going to wear out. So the lighting system itself should only be lit for the hours of usage unless you're doing it for semi-security purposes and you'd like to have the landscape lit up all night long. Then you're just replacing bulbs, and that's really no big deal. The lug connections down here, you can see the colored ones. You have 12, 13, 14, and 15 volt lugs. And the wires are going to come in through the knockouts down below. The common is going to go into the COM lug over here on your left. And then the other part of the cable is going to go into the 12, 13, 14, or 15 lugs. And that is your electrical connection. I do not suggest that you do your electrical connections with this plugged in. I suggest doing all your electrical connections cold and then plugging in your plug and then testing. Test it, make sure all your fixtures are working, then go back and bury your cable. If for some reason something doesn't work, then you don't have to excavate everything up again. Even if it was 1 or 2 lights, you don't have to go back in and disturb everything again. You know that everything worked, then bury, and then test again. Because as you're wrangling wires and putting them in little bundles and putting them down underneath the ground, things can happen. So test while it's exposed, test again when it's buried, and then you're good to go. These things are pretty simple. There's not a lot to them. You'll end up using the pin system, just like on Christmas tree light mechanical timers. That's all this really is. And you're going to set your time to come on depending on when your installation time of year is. Say it gets dark if you're putting it in fall, like we're almost to fall, so it's dark here around 7 o'clock-ish. So I would have them come on at just before 7, and then I'll have them go off probably around midnight, something like that. And that's pretty easy to do. If you're using the landscape lighting for commercial purposes, maybe you're highlighting something inside of a store, or you're needing to light something up periodically, you can have more than one start and stop time here. That's just a convenience. But for the most part, 98% of us are going to do it turning the system on at dusk and then turning it off sometime during the night. It might be at dawn, it might be shorter. For me, I want the bulbs to last as long as possible, so I'm going to have it come on at dusk and go off an hour or 2 after I go to sleep, because I just don't need them on, and it saves the hours of the bulb life. So this particular one is going to be mounted on the power pole plywood where the main panel is. I have a 20 amp GFCI protected covered type of socket that I'm going to plug into, and it's right next to where I'm going to be mounting it. You'll see that later. Now, in full transparency, the one thing that I did not like about this transformer when I received it is that power cord was conveniently bundled and tucked inside in here, but it was not run to the outside. And I thought about that a second. I said, well, I could go just through the plastic tap at the bottom. But if you'll see, it has this slot down in the corner on the bottom here. And that slot has a cable protected strain relief device on it. And yet I looked at it and I went, well, you're not going to be able to get that plug head through that tiny little strain relief hole. So what I had to do is I had to take apart 2 screws here and separate the stainless steel and slide the cable down into this and then put the screws back in. Not the biggest deal. It's all a packaging thing for them, but for the end user, especially someone who maybe has never ever touched something like this, it would probably be kind of a conundrum. And by leaving this part open down here, all it does is it invites insects and spiders and other things, even wasps and bees, to come up and make a nice warm home inside. And I'm not into that. I would prefer not to have that happen. So we'll just use the knockout and then do some either expandable foam on here or some silicone seal, so that where the cables come in, they can be sealed, and then probably a little seal down here right at the edge where I can see light that comes through. I'm probably going to put a silicone seal right across that so that bugs cannot get in and cannot infiltrate this area, because they will be attracted to the electricity and the vibration and whatever else draws insects to electricity down into the lugs. And I've seen on fix-it calls spiders and earwigs and sow bugs and other stuff get down in there and just make a home, and they can short circuit things like this. So anyway, a tip for you as far as these particular transformers: they appear to be very good quality, it was just kind of inconvenient that I had to take it apart a little bit to get the cable outside of the transformer box. Hey guys, if you've stuck with me this long, thank you very much. Give me a thumbs up and a like. I really hope I've earned a subscription. I'd like to thank our sponsor of this video again, Gardenreet Lighting out of Delaware, USA. I think they put out a fantastic product. Part 2 will be forthcoming in a matter of hours or minutes, and I hope you tune in then. That will concentrate on installation of the transformer, wiring, connecting everything up and making sure everything works. And stick around to the end of part 2 where you can see the actual product at work. Thanks again. See you on part 2.